Okay, so in the last video, hopefully I convinced you to be more specific with your podcast audience. By doing that and being insanely intentional with who the show is for, you're gonna make it way easier and much more fun for you to grow your podcast audience. By doing that and by being really intentional with who your podcast is for, you're gonna make it much more easy and much more fun to grow your podcast audience. And because of that, you're gonna be able to stop grinding it out week after week to create and publish your podcast episodes, and you'll get to start actually enjoying this and getting the audience growth that you started the show for. And you'll be able to start actually growing and monetizing your podcast into a thriving business. My name is Kevin Schmidlin. I am a podcaster and podcast coach who has taken 2 shows past 100,000 downloads and $100,000 monetized in only 3 years. And in today's lesson, we're going to learn how you can define your podcast audience super specifically so that it is poised and ready to grow way faster than it's growing now. We're going to do that by determining the 3 characteristics every single member of your podcast audience should have so that you can go and find those people really easily and so that they're going to be super excited to find your show. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this podcast exists. It's like you're reading my mind. That's what we want to inspire in our potential listeners. Huge shout out to my good friend Yuval Yarden who brought this exercise into my life. So let's begin. Blanks, who blank, and blank. Sorry, what? What did you say? Blanks, who blank, and blank. It's how we define our podcast audience. Stay with me. Give me a minute. It'll make sense. If you're starting from scratch, the first thing that you want to ask yourself if you're defining your podcast audience is this. Who would it excite me most to help? Who would it excite me most to entertain? I'm willing to bet that you can be really specific with who these people are. It's not just men aged 30 to 50 in the United States or something super vague like that. There is a specific set of people that you would be most excited and best equipped to serve, and that's who we want to target. What do the people who you're most passionate about helping all have in common? I'm telling you, there are 3 characteristics. If you're somebody who has already launched their podcast and you want to figure this out, hop into your podcast host now and look at your highest downloaded episodes. What do all of those episodes have in common? Do they serve a specific set of people? Even better, think about the people who have reached out to you and said that they love your podcast. You know, when you get an email or a comment or a text or something that says, hey, really love this episode or really love your show. Thanks so much for putting it out. And it just makes you feel so good inside. That's why we do what we do, right? Okay, so think of the last 5 people who have reached out to you to say that they really are enjoying your show. What do all 5 of those people have in common? Who are they? Why did they say that they loved your show? How did your show impact them? What characteristics do all 5 of those people have in common? Now, in general, psychographic information here is better than demographic information. What I mean by that is we don't want to go by like advertising demographic Don Draper characteristics, you know? We're not going for middle-aged professional men in the Northeast US. These aren't magazine ads. The nature of podcasting is that we can go laser focused on one super specific set of people, and we can reach all of those people in the entire world. When you're trying to target people for your podcast, if you use traditional demographic targeting, like millennials, Gen Z, boomers, 25 to 45-year-old, men, women, or any other gender identity, sexual orientation, location, except for maybe cities and small regions, all of those things are not specific enough. Even cities and small regions are not specific enough by themselves. You can use demographic information like gender identity, sexual orientation, age, generation, location in combination with other things. Right, so my first podcast, Philly Who, which was able to go past 100,000 downloads and $100,000 monetized in just over a year, didn't just target Philadelphians. There's 1 million Philadelphians, and the vast majority of those Philadelphians would not be interested in my podcast. Instead, we have to target Philadelphians who are super passionate about the city and want to get to know the movers and shakers, right? So Philadelphians is demographic, yes. But the other 2 are psychographic, really passionate about the city of Philadelphia, right? There are people who live in Philly who are not passionate about the city of Philadelphia. And there are people who live in Philly who don't give a flying F about its movers and shakers, right? So I'm targeting with Philly Who Philadelphians who are really passionate about the city and want to get to know the city's movers and shakers. Other good psychographic information relates to situations that people are in, how people define and identify themselves, how they feel right now, what their problems, fears, hopes, and dreams are, their personality. their interests, their hobbies, their fandoms, their career, their occupation, their current job status, what they want to know, what they want to have, who they want to be, right? This is all up here. It has nothing to do with your actual demographic. So I challenge you right now to come up with 3 characteristics that every single listener of your podcast must have. Your podcast is not for people who don't have all 3 of those characteristics. But Kevin, I don't want to limit my podcast audience. I want to impact people from all walks of life all over the world. Yes, you will be able to. Eventually. Me too. I love the vision. But here's the thing. You can't start there. You're not going to be able to build an audience from scratch by targeting everyone. Nobody's going to listen to you. There has to be a through line today in the early stages of your audience growth. Which do you think is more doable for you right now? Impacting millions of people who have nothing in common, or impacting a few thousand people who all have the same 3 things in common? Shouldn't we focus on reaching our first 1,000 listeners before we worry about whether we can reach 1 million listeners? I am not changing your grand vision of impact by forcing you to focus today. What I'm doing is making it more likely to happen in the future. How on earth are you supposed to reach 1 million people if you can't figure out how to reach 1,000? And by the way, every creator that you admire who has a large, wide audience, for the most part, started with a small audience of really specific people. You name it. I invite you right now to put in the comments a creator who has a wide, massive audience, and I will tell you, I will comment on the post and say who they focused on the beginning. You might stump me. There's exceptions to every rule, but we can't expect to be the exception. I'm really curious though. I want to play this game. Put someone in the comments who you think has a wide, massive audience and didn't start small with one really specific thing. Challenge me. In the meantime, I want you to list your 3 characteristics now that your podcast audience all has in common. And my Grow the Show podcast audience are podcasting entrepreneurs who have already launched their podcast and are struggling with growth and monetization. Note, that is not podcasters who haven't launched yet. It's not hobby podcasters who never want their show to be a business. It's podcasting entrepreneurs who have already launched their show and are struggling with growth and monetization. Blanks who blank and blank. And by the way, there's a really good chance that you're watching this video and getting value from it and you're not one of those 3. That just goes to show that even though those are the people that I target, I'm still able to impact other people. You will collect tons of people in your audience, like the Pied Piper walking through town, who you never imagined would have a relationship with your content. With that, I want to challenge you right now to list your 3 characteristics that every single member of your podcast audience must have right now. If you can't do this, I'm telling you, you're not going to be able to grow and monetize your show, because your show is not going to reach out and grab someone by the lapels and pull them into your audience. The more people you try to appeal to, the less people you will appeal to. If you want feedback on your blanks, who blank and blank statement, you can comment it below, or you can join us in the free Grow the Show Facebook group, which as of right now has over 1,700 other podcasters who have already done this exercise and are already growing and monetizing their show because they got good at focusing their audience. And now you know how to define your audience super specifically. The next video in this series is going to talk about how you can grow that audience super quickly by something we call targeted daily engagement. What is targeted daily engagement? Watch the next video and I'll let you know. Like and subscribe for more of this stuff.